Okay, welcome back to another edition of Getting Data Science Done Command Line Tips. Today we're going to continue talking about bash shell scripting, and if you remember last time we were speaking about how you could add command line parameters, and in fact we ended with the idea that you could process an arbitrary list of inputs, and that was particularly useful for example if we wanted to pass in a set of files that we needed to apply some processing to. Now, of course, in some instances, when you write a command line script, you'll want to process a number of different specific pieces of information, and you could use that sort of $1, $2 syntax we showed you before to sort of have a kind of convention for where different pieces of input go. Another way of doing that is using options. So we're going to use the getopts function inside bash shell scripting to talk about that today. So let's start by writing a new shell script, ops.shell. And what we're going to do is start with the obligatory hashbang /bin/bash that we started with before. Now, in this case, rather than, if you remember before, we wrote a sort of a prompt and then we iterated over the $@ command line parameters. Now we're going to sort of explicitly process those options and parameters using the getOps function. So let's do this. We use a while statement. And then this getOpts function, getOpts inside bash will iterate through all of the explicitly named options. And so these are ones where that have the little dash, a single letter, that kind of named options. And let's say for our file, what we want is we might have an input, a processing type, and an output are our options, and we sort of denote each of those with a colon, and then we call that our flag. Then we do the while iterator uses a do done syntax, but inside that we're going to use a case statement, and we use $flag here, $flag inside the string, inside the quotes. So case that if that flag is in, and the actual items in our case statement we delineate with a bracket. So for the input, we say input equals, and then we use this syntax of $ curly braces opt arg. So that basically tells us that as we're iterating over the get options that have been collected from the command line, we pass the argument that comes with that option into this internal variable input. And we repeat that process for all of the options we want to collect. So we want the one P, we'll call that process equals $ curly braces opt arg. And you'll note we're using the semicolons here because we want to clearly indicate the end of the line. And the output, again, we will collect into a local variable, $ curly braces opt arg. And then the case statement has an unusual syntax. You have to write the word case backwards, ESAC, and then done to complete the do done loop for the while operator. Then let's just echo these things out. We might say, okay, echo out our input, input, $input, $input, whatever's being passed to us. Similar thing we'll do for echo process, $process, echo output, $output, like this. So there's our first version of this bash shell script. We have to use the change mode again, plus X to make it executable, ops.shell. Then we can execute that, and what will happen, well actually you should try and guess what will happen, and then see if you're right. So basically, in the absence of opts, all of those, none of those internal variables have been set. So we just get this kind of, we output blank values for each of those. But so the way that we activate those options, so -I for input, write input file, for example, like this, and you can see that the content, the option, the argument for that option comes after the -I. It gets passed in to that variable that we set up there. Now, of course, I can just change that to be -P, and it'll change it into the, oh, I've done something wrong there with my inside the ops script. So let's have a look at that. Ops.shell. What have I done wrong here? Yes, there we go. Look, I've only made that a single S. So let's change that. Process, double S, come out, run that again, and now it passes it through to the process. Cool. We can do the same thing with the output file. Output, there we go. So we can see that it's picking up that argument to the option and putting into the right variable. Now, you might, of course, some scripts are going to have some of these, or perhaps all of them, as required variables. So what we might want to do, actually, let me first clear that up, is add some kind of check on this process. So what we can do here, we can use an operator, inside the square brackets -z, which is basically a way of checking for an empty string. And what we're going to do is check that that input file is not empty. Yeah. So what we do is, if that's empty, then what we want to do is echo out, you must supply an input, a bit clumsy today, input file, else we'll echo out the stuff that we had here before. And then what we're going to do is the if statement, we have to end with a phi. So it's another one of these ones we have to spell it backwards. So now what will happen is that it will not print this stuff out unless we have an input file. So let's just try that again. We go /opts by itself. You must supply an input file. We can say, okay, I'm just going to give you a processing file. Process me, still won't let me. It won't be until I provide that -I input file that it lets me continue. And now it's picking up the thing. Oh, we've got a problem here again, missing square bracket line 11. It's not happy about that. Cool. So you need spaces between those elements inside the square brackets when you're doing that empty string check. I hope you find this useful. See you again next time.